So I went to my class last night, and it was good. Um, I got to tell my little story about the weird synchronicities and the falcon from the other day. Um, it, it's kind of weird. It's like I was all excited for this thing, and there were like a bunch of things last week that were kind of interesting or exciting in my opinion. And then, the deal with the falcon was the one I chose to talk about. But when we started the conversation in the class, somebody wanted to share something, and it was kind of like a bunch of stuff that had been going wrong, kind of a thing. And then there was something else after that was still, it was not as depressing, but still had that little element of sadness into it. They're in it. And then it's like, it's like these people have the sad stuff to share, and then I wanted to share something that I was all excited about. It's like, oh, crap. And sometimes it's like, just sit on it. Other times, I feel like sharing it anyway. Yesterday was one of those. I think it wasn't immediate, and it was like the heaviest one was first, and then somebody else was slightly lighter, and then somebody else kind of contributed something to, kind of pull it up a little bit, I guess, on that end. And then it was like, you know what, screw it, I'm going to share it anyway. And just I feel like a part of that is, okay, going back to that symbolism with the falcon, and it's time to sit in your power, right? And I've spent my whole life not saying things because the timing just never felt right or whatever. And I'm gonna cry again. For fuck's sake. This has been a thing today. So, okay, I pulled one of the cards from my animal apothecary deck the other day. Was Nourish Your Shadow. And I was like, well, I don't feel like I've been having anything that this is really dealing with at that point in time, because was it like, I don't know, 2 or 3 days ago. But yeah, it's since come back to me the past couple days, and I didn't realize that this deal with last night is apparently connected with it too, until I'm just randomly starting to cry on the stupid thing again. Going to that point of, I always let everything talk me out of sharing stuff, whether something I was excited about, or something I was excited about, or something I was nervous about, or whatever. It's like, if somebody else had an issue that was like at the opposite end of the spectrum, then it's like, I'll just choke on it, right? Rather than share it, because clearly that's not the right time. And so now I'm looking at it and thinking that that's perhaps connected to part of this whole purpose that I'm here for, I guess. Because that's basically what life is, right? A mixture of, the highs and lows, the light and shadow, and, trying to come to balance in between the two. It's deeper than I thought it was going to go early on. But yeah, like every other time in my life, if it was like at the complete opposite end of the spectrum from a story that I would want to share, then I would just choke on it. And it's like, I'm not going to do that, because I feel like whether the story I had was higher or the story I had was lower. It's like I didn't feel like it was the right time to flip the energy, I guess, and bring that to the space. But I also feel like that's a big part of why I'm here. Like it's trying to find the balance between these things and, learn to operate more in a balanced space. And there's going to be highs and lows on everything. And, somebody might be having a really shitty week, and then somebody else has, it's not like it was even anything like great that happened. There's just like these encouraging things. And it's like, why would it be inappropriate to share encouraging things at a time when somebody else has the heavier things that they've just presented? Because it's, it's not trying to take it over and change the energy completely, but maybe lighten it a little bit, I think. Now everything is hitting differently from even where it was before. Oh, Tazzy. He's gonna drive me nuts in this one today, because he's been... he's gonna have to get a bath, because he keeps licking his leg, and I don't know if something's bothering him, or like probably kicked up mud or something and sticking funky. But now we're gonna have to do that too. So it's needed to happen, but now I think we're going to be where we can't just keep skipping it, or postponing it rather, even though it's supposed to, or it's still... We got all this snow melting off, standing water in the yard, and mud everywhere. Might be bath time anyway. They all need it. So yeah. Anyway, kind of, I guess going with that, we watched this video in group that felt like there's some big importance to it. And the nature of the video was basically when the church or specific individuals decided to take like the idea of reincarnation out of the Bible. They were what it made me think of was, first off, I think I have some connection to that from another existence. But I mentioned in a video a while back that I have this book on my shelf that I felt like I had to get it. And it's one that I've never read. I don't know if I've even cracked it open. But it's actually on the bookshelf where I can see it from my bed. So I don't know that that's necessarily necessary, but probably because that's where I see it the most. And it's one of those, it's like I don't have to read it. The title is what it's about to some degree. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know, whatever. Just, okay, it's called Heresy. And I feel like just having it there, basically staring at me in a way, and it's the one I go to kind of regularly, like because to be honest, when I'm laying in bed, I'm facing the bookcase most often. And if it's light in the room, not like necessarily, I have a blackout curtain, but light still comes in around the top of it. And I can kind of see it then, but really it just depends on how much light is in the space. But if I have my lamp on, then it's, blaringly obvious right there. And I feel like, and I was trying to convey this point to the class too, I feel like it's one of those things that I've had to have it in my space because I feel like in other lifetimes that has probably gotten me killed. And like that whole fear of using my voice thing has stayed with me through lifetimes. Probably not every lifetime. That would be silly to think all were the same, but I feel like there's definitely been multiples where I've probably gotten killed for this stuff, and I've talked about how my dad and I got into it that one day and he called me a dumb bitch. Like, when I was sitting with that thought later, I just had this overwhelming impression that he's killed me in other lifetimes. And it's like, that's interesting. And yeah, it's like your energy body doesn't just let go of everything once a lifetime is over. It stays with you until you heal the thing, right? So, like just all the things in this lifetime that have made me feel like I couldn't use my voice, but then also having other lifetimes where I'm pretty sure that speaking out was probably what got me in trouble, and why it's been so hard for me to do it this time around. Yeah. It's like just having that book there and looking at the title. It's like, that is enough. It's like just that staring at me in a way is I think serving as something that I'm kind of having to push back up against and realize that, yeah, what I talk about in general will probably piss a whole lot of people off, but there's a reason I am who I am, the way I am in this existence. There's something specific that I'm meant to do here, and it's wound into all these things that I've casually prayed for throughout my entire lifetime in this existence, but also that I've tried for in other existences as well. Now, also, probably not everyone, and because of course we all have the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And yeah, but I feel with like the specific weight of that burden behind using my voice, it's like there is something very big and important here. And one thing that came up in class was because I was talking about collecting books while I was in seminary. And there were multiple people that were like, "You went to seminary?" It's like, yep. And I had a couple people that wanted to talk to me about that. It's like, all right, well, here we go. So the seminary point. Now, there's a lot of people in there that are like former Catholics and, have come out of that existence. I was not Catholic, but I was still around some pretty toxic religious beliefs in there as well. And the one lady I was talking to at dinner after, I told her, it's like, I got a TBI when I was there, I said, and it kind of served, I feel like it served a couple different purposes. Like, on the one hand, it was a reset. And it was like, now here's this thing that, okay, for my entire life, I was too shy to talk to people, right? I didn't want to speak out in class, and it about killed me when I would get called on in class and all this stuff. And when I was in seminary and got the TBI, it got to a point where I couldn't not interact anymore, because if I didn't raise my hand and ask questions, I wasn't able to stay with the train of conversation. I wasn't able to get the point of what we were talking about. But what I told her was, it's like, I feel like she offered the idea, like, when I was trying to explain it, she was like the conditioning went away. And it's like, maybe. It's like, because it's like things hit differently. Like, I remember being in one class and we were talking about the idea of the Satan figure, and how in the Hebrew traditions, they don't have a Satan figure, and the word they have for it translates to adversary. And I remember sitting there in this class, having this whole thing dropped in my lap, basically, and I'm sitting there. I was like, really? I didn't say this to the class. Like, I was so dumbfounded at this idea that I went, like, I had my computer in front of me, so I Googled some random synagogue in Indianapolis and emailed some rabbi. I couldn't tell you who it is now. I think it was from my school email anyway, so it's like, I wouldn't still have it. Even if it was the one that the one I had when I was married, it's like, I wouldn't have that either, because that was one of the first things I did, was get that gone. Well, after the divorce was finalized, because I didn't want him having access to the new one. But yeah. So I emailed this random rabbi and was asking him about it, and he's like, that's correct. And, he had a little explanation for it, and I was just so dumbfounded. And it's like, okay, so then what's the purpose of this getting added in, right? Well, obviously, if we have a Satan figure to obsess over, then we can always be terrified of there's something bad out there to get us, so we're trapped in fear, and we're never going to go anywhere because we're so stuck in fear that we can't move to the next thing, right? We can't move beyond that, because everything that's bad must come from this evil figure out there to destroy us all. It's like, And then there was another one where it's like, the things I remember most from seminary, it's like, I don't remember. Okay, I even had a span of time where I used to read my Bible a lot, y'all, and now, like, I have things I can vaguely remember, but as far as, like, going to specific things, with the exception of the Bible verse that I have on my wrist, which is Isaiah 46:4, and I still completely agree with that one. It says, even to your old age and gray hairs, I am he that will sustain you. I have made you, I will carry you, I will sustain you, and I will rescue you. And that came up, I found it on a bookmark when I was, after I officially and finally, for good, broke up with the boyfriend from high school, and had other stuff that I was struggling with on that end, mainly because he was dating a girl in my hall in the same dorm, just on a different floor. And she had tried to befriend me while he and I were still together, and then when they ended up being together shortly thereafter, it's like, yeah. Oh, it was funny because I wanted to be mad at her, and like I would send her a message starting to bitch about something, and then we would end up in the lounge of the dorm all hours of the night, just like laughing and talking about God knows what and a little bit of everything. But it always started because I was pissed and I wanted to be mad at her. And so it was kind of like misdirected anger, I guess. And I knew that. But at the same time, no, it was what it was. We were decent friends for a while, in spite of their being together for 2 years. And we never hung out anytime with him also. It was just like we would randomly meet up for lunch or do something. I think we even went to the park a couple times after we graduated. I don't know. But anyway, how did I get there? Oh, like, she was big into the churchy stuff too. And, well, I mean, that was the time period for this current existence, right? I hung out with a bunch of churchy types. Where they stand on that now, who knows? I know a lot of them still are very actively involved with that, and that's fine. This is something I've been thinking about recently. Sorry, forgot the word. Because, okay, the other day, I told that story about the guy that I casually went out with a few times, and I posed the idea to the universe that it was okay, but if it was not what was meant for me, then I didn't want it. And how when it disappeared, it like went in a big bad way. I talked about his buddy started sending me like really shitty text messages after I went out with a group of my housemates. And this guy happened to be there. And, I talked about how it really bothered me that, like, the stuff the guy was saying. I blocked him and shut off access in that way. But then when I was thinking about it the other day, it's like I feel like there was still an element of that I carried with me. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but I think he was the first, I talked about my ex-husband making the comments about should have raped me when he had the chance. I think whatever that guy had said was something rapey. And so it's like, I didn't take him seriously per se. Like I blocked him and that was that. But I feel like that just the weight of that statement stayed with me, right? And like, I tried to bury it at the time thinking, whatever, he's nothing, and what I was thinking about it the other day was that here I go again. Fuck. I feel like even though I knew Matt was basically a joke as far as that was never meant to be anything serious, and honestly it was a time waster, but what it did do was give this asshole enough of an in to say the shitty things or that did have some kind of impact on me, just who I am, how I pick things up, and that's just, it's a crab thing. That's just, just absorb it all, right? Sorry, that was a weird noise. Yeah. So, it was like, even though I knew Matt wasn't anything serious, it was never meant to be anything like that, I think giving that situation the opportunity to, I talked about how he went to telling anybody and everybody he could that I was crazy. Just the fact that he was able to, that in and of itself didn't bother me so much. I think it was more the fact that I had given him enough in my life that the stuff that came up after that was able to affect me as much as it did. And, I think it says way more about him at that point in time to take it to the extreme of literally talking to all these people about how crazy I was, and I know there were multiples of them because, there's the dude that texted me. There was another guy that I was like casually friends with for a while, and I'm not sure how that happened other than I felt sorry for him. But I think that goes to, okay, the idea of you are the company you keep. I feel like on my end of that, I've talked about absorbing very dense energies, and that's how I transmute it. I take it in as my own and have to figure out how to get it out of my system, how to clear it. And at that time, I didn't know it was even a thing. I was just like absorbing all this shit that that I shouldn't have even interacted with at all. And the only reason I did was because this guy was like, okay, the way I even met him, like, I didn't take him seriously from the get-go, honestly. And yet, that part of me that, was trying to be the good Christian girl that I was told I had to be, made me feel obligated, I guess, to be nice to assholes that I shouldn't have bothered. They should never have had any of my attention, especially that one, because he was kind of, that goes to that point of giving the devil a foothold kind of a thing. And he was the one that got in enough because I didn't take it seriously enough that it was as big of a joke as it was. And it was not something that it was ever, I think the point of it, because all my life, I remember this thing in the back of my mind that I just wanted to understand how people get into the situations they find themselves in and then feel stuck to the point they can't get out of them. And that's why I knew divorce was on my path, because obviously that's something that a lot of people get trapped in, right? So a big part of my purpose on that end was that I had to go through this thing that would not be easy, but the point of it for me was for me specifically, was to show that life isn't over if you leave the toxic situation. Just because the church and everything in the current way of existence says that, like, divorce is the worst thing and why would anybody want you if you're damaged goods and all this shit, it's like, that is absolutely shit. And quite frankly, the idea of damaged goods is what gets people into those connections to begin with, because, you know, this world is so set on keeping everything in locked into duality. You know, like the one I'm going to come back to the most, because it's the most relevant on most of what I'm talking about, I guess, is that masculine and feminine piece, right? So the distorted, okay, Matt was a prime example of the distorted masculine, because there was nothing about that was a healthy situation. I, at that time, was absolutely locked into that distorted feminine piece, because, you know, I'd heard all this shit about, you know, women are supposed to be submissive and, you know, all this crap. And you know, that you have to be a certain way for anybody to love you or find you acceptable even. And the really aggravating piece is that I can say, honestly, okay, I know this about me because when I was in high school and I was with the guy, I knew it wasn't the one for me. I didn't want to waste his time. I didn't want to waste my time. I knew he wasn't the one for me. And so I tried to break up with him like 3 times. But I couldn't stick with it at that point in time, because there was so much that I was absorbing otherwise that I really needed somebody to help me through that span of time in my life. And then it got to a point where it was safer to stay with the person that I knew I wasn't going to be with forever, because, you know, like, at the one point, his little sister ended up in my section when I was section leader, and it's like, she's gonna make my life a living hell if we stay broken up that whole time. And I think at that point, we had been broken up for like a month, and it was during the band off season. So when we get started back and she's in my section, it's like, it's not gonna work. So to find some peace in that situation, we ended up getting back together. And, you know, I don't regret that, but at the same time, it's like, I knew he wasn't the one that I was meant to be with, because I've always known that there's like one specific person out there for me, right? Like, that has been like a very key component in big parts of this journey, you know. And when I was trying to get out of that, it was because I didn't want to just waste each other's time. But then I felt stuck, basically. So I allowed myself to be stuck for the time, because I knew eventually it would come around and, you know, we'd go our separate ways and it would be fine. But I think also, since I couldn't commit to it and stay committed to the breakup while other people who knew him were in my vicinity, It's like we never had the opportunity to learn how to be friends after the breakup. And I feel like that's unfortunate because I feel like we could have been. But it just, whatever. It is what it is. Fry all over myself. And then my stomach's growling, so sorry if you hear that. Yeah. But it's like, I've always known that for me, there's one specific person. But then I've also been locked into this idea of looking for it outside of me first. And yeah, part of it's the lessons that I was trying to learn to figure out the things so I could do whatever I'm meant to be doing here. Like the second guy was good, but at the same time, not it, and I had to believe that it was it, because if there was at any point a doubt in my mind at the possibility of that being it, we wouldn't have stayed together. We wouldn't have stayed together long enough for me to get the lessons from it that I needed. And that one, I knew early on, this guy will have dark hair and brown eyes. So then the other guy comes along and he's got blue eyes and like dark blonde hair. It's like, I knew if I would have really checked in with myself, that wasn't quite it. Funny thing is, okay, so I talked about I've talked about the name Rick following me around my whole life because that's his name. And this was a Nick. So it's like, it rhymed, but it wasn't it. And yeah, when I said that, it was there was 3717 on the clock. 717's that twin flame number again. Yeah, so it's like I knew everything in me that knew there was something I was looking for would have been like, okay, well, this is good, but this isn't it. But I had to believe that it was what I was looking for, right? So, because of, my lifetime conditioning and all that fun stuff, when I got into it, I had to believe that was the one, right? And I think going back to that adversary point, there's that voice that popped into my mind when we were having this bonding moment at one point, about this is the one you're supposed to marry or whatever. It's like, I think that's kind of ego voice. And the adversarial part, because there's more to the story that you're trying to learn. But if just because of who I am, if I knew and could not deny it, that wasn't what I was looking for, like everything in me knew it, then I wouldn't have got the lesson out of it. So that's the whole reason for the veil of forgetfulness, right? So you get these little moments that pop up and say, yes, keep going in this direction. And it was like, there were parts of that relationship that were really good, and then there were parts of it that were not so good, and the biggest thing is when we were having the really heartfelt conversation and I held back because I was afraid of telling him my deepest, darkest secrets, I guess. And even though I knew that he wouldn't reject me for them, especially at that point, for whatever reason, I just could not bring myself to talk to him about them. And everything in me was saying, do it. And I just could not. And so because I couldn't, it's like I was always holding back a part of myself that, so the relationship was always kind of doomed after that, because I was being as authentic as I could, despite the fact that I had something I could not share. So, that rejected part of myself, that screamed in agony for much of my life, and that I've spent crying over a bunch today, and even last night. So, yeah. The thing that came up last night, it's like, okay, I mentioned the girl that I've seen that's kind of in his circle at this point in time that reminds me a lot of me. And initially, it was like, cool. So I know that there's something going on around him, like in this divine orchestration of what all is happening, that my energy is very much around him as well. And duh, I knew that. Because I can't be having all the synchronicities and all the weird stuff that keeps pointing back to him if it wasn't for, or if he wasn't also experiencing the same thing to some degree. Or something comparable, right? So somehow there's little hints of me in his existence as well. Whether that's going to be one of those things that I'll be interested to find out, because like I know my little fly on the wall moment popping up in his live stream, and then he responded to me. I know it freaked me the fuck out, and it was immediately followed with me realizing that I didn't feel safe in my body, and trying to navigate through some of that stuff. And then him and some of the guys in his world started appearing in my dreams, and it's like there's something going on that is far bigger than me. But yeah. But anyway, last night, that shadow piece again rearing its head, I guess the adversarial element, if you want to go that route, was, but if she's there, then why should I feel like it, going right back to that whole freaking worthiness wound again. It was like the off-brand version of me is there, but and I know that is exactly why that Jay Shetty video came up yesterday that said the wrong person can hold your hand, but the right person will hold your heart. And it's like, even with the 333s in the comments and everything, it's like, I know this, right? But yet there's that wound again. And so I spent some time last night, I did a little meditation, and had some thoughts that kind of easing me down off of this space, right? That goes back to that Nourish the Shadow card that it said, whatever the feelings are, own that they are uncomfortable, but choose to sit there with yourself in that space to figure them out, right? Well, that's not exactly what I said, but that's pretty close. And so last night, it's like when that flared up, then I did chill and meditate for a while. And after I was done with that, I decided I was ready to go to bed because I was just really drained. I still needed to, spend my journal time, so I did do a little bit of that before I went to bed. But when I started to turn the lights out, or I turned the light by my desk or on my desk out, and when I turned the other direction, the first thing I noticed was the wrong clock that, doesn't keep time for shit, was at 3:33. It's like, there's something with threes right now. Threes in particular, because yesterday when I got in the car to take the dogs on their walk, there's 333 on the odometer, and then I don't remember at what point that popped up on the trip mileage as well, but it was like somewhere in a short span of time. And it's like, yep, there we go again. And the numbers on the two kind of, there's a weird interplay with them. I think last night I looked at one point, there was 71771 on the odometer, and some other combination of them on like 1711 or something on the trip mileage. So it's like there's a weird kind of back and forth interplay on those as well. And and then I saw 777 in like 3 different ways or 3 different combinations because of all those numbers there too. Like, that's interesting. And I saw that one on a license plate when I was going to class. Random additional point. Yeah. So that worthiness wound. So today I got ready and finally ended up in my office for a little while. And while I was sitting there, I decided to meditate again. And I pulled up this. So the one I used last night was like a blissful deep relaxation or something by the Honest Guys. And I love their stuff. The one I did today was a shamanic drumming one that they had. It was like a half an hour. And I feel like the shamanic drums are one of the most helpful for me because I can focus on the drum beat and not get completely caught up in my thoughts. Where if I'm just trying to sit there and be quiet, my brain doesn't like to be quiet. So the drums at least gives me something particular to focus on. Like Abraham Hicks talks a lot about, you can focus on like the hum of the air conditioner or whatever. It's like finding something like that you can focus on to help with the meditation process. So it's kind of like that. So I was listening to this drum thing, and it's kind of sitting in that moment, I guess. And one of the things that came up was this time when I was in high school, and I was pissed at something. I don't remember what it was, but then my uncle came over to bring something that my mom had asked my aunt for, since I live across the yard. And the dogs were going nuts, and when I went to open the door, me and my dog Chance, that was my baby, and he was, we got him the summer before my senior year, when he was just a puppy. We collided, and I think it was actually when I was in undergrad and I was home for the weekend, because he might not have been full grown, but he was pretty big, so I don't think he was puppy, or like that first year puppy type point. I think it was beyond that. But he was barking at the door and jumping up and down and going all crazy, and like, I turned and went to block him with my leg, and I, like, swung around a lot harder than I anticipated, and it was enough that he, it collided with him, and he's like, oof, and hit the ground, and kind of got winded because I'd done that so hard, and, like, I crumbled because that was my baby, and I hurt him, and I was not okay with that. So I'm sitting there today, and I'm just got tears streaming down my face because I'm thinking about this whole thing. And I realized that part of this unworthiness wound thing goes to this point of, the mistakes made when, like, for that, my energy collided with him, and it was misdirected because he wasn't what I was mad at all. And yet, it's like that moment of my energy, like, just coming right back around. It was like collided with him, and then, he was never afraid of me or anything, and, just that moment, and I cried then when it happened, but I realized that that's one of those things of, like, I think the fear of misdirecting my energy is also there. So then it's like, okay, so then if I have this big stuff on my path, then it's like, what if I fuck it up again, right? And I'm confident that's not going to be the case, but I also know that that's why I have to kind of work through these emotions now, and like, the stuff that's being processed is for a purpose, and I know that goes with that fear of misusing or misdirecting the energy, and then what if I hurt somebody from that space. But it's like, that's also the big point of this whole path too, is to, the stuff I'm learning, especially when it comes to this whole religion and politics bullshit, and navigating that whole space. It's like, I have to confront the demons in myself, so that when I start really pissing people off with the things I have to say, I've already dealt with the hard stuff, and they can't affect me because I've already dealt with that in myself. And I know, like that deal with Chance, it was misdirected energy for sure, and I felt terrible about it, and obviously it never went away because I can cry about it today too, but like, I was just sitting there, tears streaming down my face today, and trying to do this meditation. And yeah, one of the things, since we've been talking about reincarnation for this class, and I've thought this before, like, even before I was any kind of okay with the idea of reincarnation on the human end, like, I've always kind of felt it acceptable on the animal end, right? So I had Chance. We got him June 2001, and he died in October 2014. And his birthday was May 1st. So that's another one of those numbers that kind of follows me around, 5-1. But also 515 is my great grandma, so it's like all right there. But when, when my ex and I were looking for a friend for Ziva, we ended up on a wait list for Taz, and that was just an inquiry thing. Like, it wasn't, we wanted to meet him, but we didn't know that we wanted him, kind of a thing. But because we were like fourth on the wait list, we kept looking, and then ended up with Gidget because she was a puppy. I don't know where he found her information at, but like these people, like within 10 minutes of us, had a litter of puppies, and she was the last one. She was 12 weeks old. They were selling her for $40, and he's like, "Oh, can we do it?" And it's like, oh man. So we took Ziva with us to check her out, and they got along real well, and she was ready to go to a new home, and so she went with us. So then when it comes up for us, our number came up with Taz. I wasn't sure that the rescue would allow us to do it because we just brought a puppy in, so it's like not even a rescue, but just a puppy that somebody happened to have, and, we ended up with her. And so I sent a message to the people and was like, I gave probably way too much information about that, being my concern on that end, that they wouldn't want to consider us as a possibility anymore. And that was not the case. In fact, this dude, I love this dude. We met the girl with the rescue at a dog park and had him on the leash, and my ex had the puppy in the other lot, and then we had Ziva off the leash in the dog park, and she just kept coming over and checking things out, and they accepted each other pretty quick. And since I'd spent a lot of time working with dogs, since I've had them all my life, and used to be okay at training, so you wouldn't really notice that with these guys. Ziva, she can do some tricks though. She don't listen for shit on a lot of things when there's food involved, but she knows some things. But yeah, with Taz, we had him on a trial run one weekend, and he was following me around the house, and I was in the dining room, and I don't remember what I was doing exactly, but he was just right with me, and when I looked at him, he looked up at me, and it was just like the way Chance always used to look at me, and it's like, he's not going anywhere, he's supposed to be with me. And the day that I decided that was actually Chance's birthday. There we go again. So since we've been talking about this stuff, it's like, I've always kind of wondered if that was just like, just looking at me like, what the hell are you doing, human? I always kind of thought that maybe that was Chance coming back. And that's, for some reason, Chance and Taz, it's like, those aren't really that close other than the in the middle of them. But, it's amazing how many times any of us in the current household have gotten the names jacked up. And even my brother and my sister-in-law both have made that goof name-wise too. So it's like, I've always kind of wondered that, especially since, I decided that he was meant to be with me on Chance's birthday. It was just like, yeah. And, don't get me wrong, he's definitely no Chance. Chance was like I don't know. That was a special dog. But He's pretty special too. Yeah. They're both just like, what are you doing? It's been long enough now, right? Anyway. Where was I going with that? There's a whole point in that, I'm sure. Well, this one, he gives me all sorts of opportunities to make up for anything I've done wrong as well. Yeah. He's got a tree of life on his head, so. And a little star. Sometimes when it's spread out right, like right now, it kind of looks like the Star of David. But that was one of those things, it's like, since he had the tree of life on his head, it's like, this dog is meant to be with me, and then Gidget was born on 2/22, so, the few months when I had to leave them with my ex because my mom didn't want me to bring them with me, it's like, instinctively, I knew they were meant to be with me. Yeah. Yeah. We're about done, no worries. Big slurp. Yes, I love you so much. Oh, that's a big slurp. Oh, that's enough. Okay. Kids are getting carried away. I feel like... Now Ziva's up too. Ziva-deeby! Ziva-deeby! Like... Yep. Hey, knock it off. And somehow... I don't know what happened exactly, but she ended up with my makeup on her nose today. And where's your nose? You sure? Yeah. I think must have been when I was crying because I had streaks everywhere and kept messing it. But yeah. Anyway, since we're getting wound up now, I guess I should probably just wrap it up so we can go home. Probably want some more water and I haven't. Well, I can do this, I guess. Yep, he wants more water. I don't know if I can do it and not make a mess, so. Okay, so we're in camel mode now. Yeah. I feel like there was more to that I hadn't finished yet, but I don't know. Finish it all, dude. So maybe I'll just wrap it up with Taz slurping, because that's fabulous. Alright, that's all of it. Debating on skating today. What time is it? 3:43. I have time, because I don't get over there until, I go that way, anywhere from 3:45 on later, whenever. I think it's supposed to rain later this evening, but see, that's all I needed. Now I can wilt again. Probably have to lengthen that a little, his car seat a little bit, since he's trying to nap like that. Weirdo. Yeah, gotta keep those two in the back seat, otherwise they'd all be up here on my lap. It's like, that's not helpful. Ziva has spent her whole life being my co-pilot, so she's 12, so and she's a lot smaller and can handle that spot better. So yeah. I suppose when I watch this video back later, then it'll probably tell me where I can start tomorrow. Yeah. But I've been thinking a lot too about that video that I had pop up a couple years ago, where there's a kid, he's trying to be a good Christian boy, talking about how bad meditation is, and I was just like, shut up, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. And one of the things he was saying was something about it gives the demons a way in or whatever. It's like, no, what meditation does is force you to face the shadow aspects. So yeah, religion will call it demons and everything to scare you, go back to that whole Satan figure, so we can keep you in fear and keep you from progressing and moving forward and all that kind of stuff. And I think about that a lot with my dad and my mom to an extent. It's like they're so busy staying locked into the old mindset and not doing the work that needs to be done. It's like, okay, there's the whole ascension thing is actually happening. But part of where, okay, like I've heard years and years about, this idea of a rapture or whatever, and then like the church people are supposed to go to, ascend to heaven or whatever, right? It's like the ones left behind will be in chaos. It's like that chaos is going to come from the people like my family who are so set in keeping this belief system that when everything else ascends around them and they don't, they're going to wonder what happened, right? So it's like the church is doing the very thing to keep people locked into not being able to make this shift to, higher dimensional ways of being. It's like, there'll probably be chaos because everything you've been told you suddenly realize is extremely wrong and has been wrong all along. And, it's like there are aspects of it that are based in truth, but the way it's being told is to specifically keep people bound in toxic ways of existing, keep you locked into the duality where, women have to be this way and men have to be this way. And then only those two, one man, one woman, are supposed to get married. It's like, that's not what it is. It's that union. You have to come to union within yourself to be able to make this shift, and realize that all is one. Everything is one thing. We are all an important piece of this puzzle, but if we stay trapped in the distortion, then it gives everybody in the distorted way of being permission to abuse everybody else. That's why it doesn't work, and why most of us are shifting away from it. Except for those that are so dead set on maintaining the shit that's been perpetuated for centuries, specifically to keep people trapped and stuck. So, yeah. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to call it, and I will do this again tomorrow. So, as always, I appreciate you, and until the next time, see ya.